Welcome back to my channel. Last night I did a show with Reasoned Answers Apologetics discussing the southern influences on Islam from Yemen, from Ethiopia, and those connections. So we're looking at Africa, Yemen, all in the south of Arabia as well as in Eastern Africa, and of course those connections to Abraham and to Mecca. One of the questions that did come up was the discussion around the location of Ur. I thought, let me discuss that because it has been generally assumed since about the 1920s, 1930s that Ur is in the south in Mesopotamia. However, that was not the prevailing view prior and is also seemingly not the prevailing view today. Of course, it has become the popular view within the common knowledge, but within academia, this is not the case. Ur is more than likely, and seems to be and has always been considered to be located, and even according to the biblical evidence, has been located in the north near Turkey, close to the city of Haran. This is an article from Biblical Archaeology Review from March-April 2000, and I want to thank my subscribers and supporters who've donated money, which allows me to have this subscription, which allows me to find this information. This article is called Abraham's Ur, is the Pope going to the wrong place? It says here Pope John Paul II, so clearly this is a 22-year-old article. He's going to Iraq. Why Iraq? Because that is where the patriarch Abraham was born, at Ur. And then it says, but wait a minute, the Pope may be going to the wrong Ur. Perhaps he should be going to Turkey. Now remember, this is called Biblical Archaeology Review, so this is written by some of the top scholars in the world, and they do biblical archaeology, biblical history. So more than 40 years ago, Cyrus Gordon, the eminent biblical scholar and Near Eastern polymath, argued that the commonly designated Ur on the west bank of the Euphrates in southern Iraq is not the Ur where Abraham was born. Let's have a quick look at this man. Cyrus H. Gordon, Abraham and the Merchants of Ura, Journal of Near Eastern Studies, 17, published in 1958. Right, and there's a second article mentioned here, which I will get into. Where is Abraham's Ur? That's also in the Biblical Archaeology Review. We'll go to that later. Gordon told me that before the middle of the 19th century, everyone located Ur in the north, based on the only evidence then available, the biblical text. With the decipherment of cuneiform, a southern Ur was identified in Iraq, an Ur that ultimately produced fabulous finds. As a result, scholars changed their focus to the south. As Klaus Westermann has remarked, after Leonard Woolley's work at southern Ur, the idea that this great and ancient center of civilization must have been Abraham's homeland captured the popular imagination. But in the Bible, there is no trace of any connection with Ur in the south. There is only the name. One thing seems clear. There was more than one Ur. Places named Ur or something linguistically close enough to be a candidate for Abrahamic Ur, such as Ura, have turned up in numerous ancient inscriptions at Ugarit on the Mediterranean coast in modern Syria, at Nuzi in northeastern Iraq, at Alalak in Turkey about 100 miles north of Ugarit, most recently in the extraordinary archive from Ebla in northern Syria, east of Ugarit. The Ebla tablets include references to places called Ur, Ura, and Urau. Unfortunately, none can be located with precision. But the find spots of the tablets indicate the cities were most likely somewhere in northern Syria or southern Turkey, near Haran. You should note, you might remember, those of you who've read this section in the Bible, Abraham's brother was called Haran. Haran is where Abram, as he was then called, went with his father Terah after they left Ur in Genesis 11:31. There is no dispute regarding the location of Haran, where Terah died. So Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, see here, Abram's brother, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, known as Sarah later, his son Abram's wife, and he set out from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. When they came to Haran, they settled there. Now, it should be noted, let me go here to Google Maps. This would be the area. Haran is up here in the north. This is the area of Haran. Canaan is down here. Right. This would be down here. So if they started out in this area up here, they would have easily gone down to here and then just simply turned southwest here. Otherwise, for whatever reason, they would have had to travel from here, all the way from down here in Mesopotamia, all the way up to here for no reason at all, stopping at Haran and then coming down. There is no reason to suppose that this is correct, except for Woolley's assertion, let's say, that this was the Ur, or at least the popular conception that somehow arose. So this, well, let's get into the evidence. So you'll see this makes a lot more sense. Also, he could have just gone from here, left. QED. Right, moving on. There is no dispute regarding the location of Haran. The ancient name has stuck to the site. It is 10 miles north of the Syrian border in Turkey, located on the east-west highway that links the Tigris with the Mediterranean. It was a major city in the Bronze Age, the first half of the second millennium. The probable date of the patriarchal age, if we accept the position that there was such an age. Unfortunately, except for a small sounding, Haran has never been excavated. A major expedition was planned by Harvard professor Lawrence Steger, but bureaucratic obstacles laid by the Turkish government blocked the way. Of course, we also know that in Mecca, archaeology has been, well, not allowed, and of course they've simply just concreted over the entire place, which, yeah, there is absolutely no evidence for the existence of Mecca, otherwise why would they simply destroy it? But here you've got the same problem with the Turkish government. They probably don't want the standard narrative interrupted. That was when Steger and his financial backer moved to Ashkelon in Israel. Ashkelon is now the most important American excavation site in the Holy Land. So what we know about Haran comes from cuneiform archives such as the Nuzi tablets. Now, the major objection to identifying biblical Ur with the southern Ur in Iraq is that it is so far away from Haran, nearly 1,000 miles. That would be like 1,400 kilometers. As the author, Yoshitaka Kobayashi, of the ancient Haran in the Anchor Bible Dictionary notes, the traditional site of Ur in the southern Mesopotamia may be re-examined as some seek the location near Haran. If Abram left for Canaan from the southern Ur, he took an unnecessarily long route by going all the way north. As one scholar has remarked, Haran is not normally found on the way from Ur in southern Mesopotamia to Canaan. Let's see what that reference is. So that's Westerman, Genesis 12 to 36, page 139. As another stated, any route from the Ur excavated by Leonard Woolley to Canaan would not go so far north or east as Haran. Traveling from Ur to Canaan, Abram could have cut west long before reaching Haran. Just to reiterate what we showed here, let's have a look. This is Canaan, this is Abraham. Yeah, that's a little bit to the west, right? Whereas, why would he have to go all the way up here? There's no reason for that. Now, Gordon points to another objection. The southern Ur lies on the west bank of the Euphrates. Here's why that matters. When Abram was an old man, he sent his servant back to the land of my birth, Ur, to find a wife for his son Isaac. Abram's obedient servant went back to the land of Abram's birth and there found Rebekah, Laban's sister. So Laban is the first person to greet Abram's servant. A generation later, Isaac's son Jacob went back, presumably to Ur, to work for Laban. After working for Laban for 20 years, Jacob fled back to Canaan. To do so, he had to cross the Euphrates. That's Genesis 31:21. If Ur was on the west bank of the Euphrates, as the southern Ur is, it would not be necessary to cross the Euphrates to travel to Canaan. Ergo, the southern Ur cannot be the place that Abram sent his servant. In addition, we are told that Laban lived in Padan Aram in the Haran region. So scholars equate this with Aram Naharaim, Abram's ancestral home. Both terms refer to the areas in upper or northern Mesopotamia as indicated in other biblical references. So what turned scholars' attention to southern Ur as the place of Abraham's birth were the remarkable excavations at Ur. Let's have a quick look again. So this is the Great Ziggurat. Let's have a look. You can see here we have the Great Ziggurat. Quite impressive, but it doesn't fit the biblical story. It was identified as Ur shortly after Henry Rawlinson deciphered cuneiform. In 1854, J.E. Taylor dug up at the site some foundation deposits containing clay cylinders. When they were deciphered, they identified the site as Ur. In 1922, Leonard Woolley began a major excavation, which continued until 1934. Now, he made spectacular discoveries. Now, if his purpose was to connect the site to the biblical patriarch Abraham, he was successful. See, because Woolley was a prolific and popular writer with a flair for publicity, which might account for the fact that he referred to his Ur as the biblical home of Abraham and his find as worthy of Abraham. The city expanded to 125 acres. As to whether this was Abrahamic Ur, the author Jean-Claude Magon of the ancient Ur in the Anchor Bible Dictionary notes a certain contradiction in the closeness suggested by the Genesis text between a prodigious urban capital and a nomad clan. Do the maths on that. The defenders of the southern Ur do so largely on the basis of the view as to what Ur, the biblical author, had in mind. The biblical author calls it Ur of the Chaldees, rather than the place where Abraham was born. This, for example, is the view of Harvard professor Peter Mackinist. And the author of this article spoke with him after reading his entry on Ur in the HarperCollins Bible Dictionary. There, Professor Mackinist states that Gordon's suggestion of a northern Ur has been largely rejected today in favor of the southern Ur. But, as the author discovered when he spoke with Professor Mackinist, he said that he was rethinking the statement and the whole issue. In his entry on Ur, Mackinist said he had not adequately distinguished between two kinds of questions. What Ur did the biblical authors have in mind when they referred to Ur of the Chaldees? and where in actual fact was Abraham's original home, assuming of course there was a historical Abraham. Well, what of the early historical Abraham? Where did he come from, assuming that there was such a historical figure? On this level, Mackinnon states that he's not prepared to make a judgment. He does say that he would now revise the statement in his HarperCollins Bible Dictionary article that Gordon's position is largely rejected today. Indeed, Klaus Westermann has come to the opposite conclusion. Many scholars took over Gordon's thesis, the majority inclined to a northern Mesopotamian origin. I've already quoted passages from the Anchor Bible Dictionary entries on Ur and Haran, in which the authors expressed hesitations in identifying Abraham's Ur as the southern Ur. Mackinist recognizes today that more people than he supposed would hesitate or even reject identifying the historical Ur of Abraham with the Ur of southern Mesopotamia. The southern Ur is never referred to in ancient inscriptions as Ur of the Kasdim, in English, Chaldeans. Moreover, the Kasdim, the Chaldean in Akkadian, never appear in any historical record before the early 9th century BC, hundreds of years after Abraham. So this reference could not be part of the original tradition. As Roland DeVoe has stated, the southern Ur could not have been called Ur of the Chaldeans at that time. So Gordon mentions two possibilities for the location of Abraham's Ur, both in southern Turkey, near the Syrian border. One is Ura, northeast of Haran, another is Urfa, today called Sanliurfa, about an hour's drive from Haran. Today, local tradition in Urfa insists, and this is Jewish as well as Islamic tradition, insists that this is where Abraham was born. The chief mosque is or was named the Mosque of Abraham. The pool with the sacred fish is called the Lake of Abraham, the Beloved. Another possibility is that Ur, as used in the Bible, refers not to a city, but a region. Now it should be noted that if we think of the Chaldees as a region, when this passage in the Bible was composed in Genesis, Chaldeans dominated the north as well as the south. This is Where is Abraham's Ur? This is June 1977 from the Biblical Archaeology Review. So a new Ebla tablet refers to Ur in Haran. Haran, let's have a look at where Haran is. Haran is up here. This is Haran right here. This is Urfa or Sanliurfa, and this is the Ur that everyone assumes is the birthplace of Abraham. This is the place that it seems the majority of scholars prefer. A new tablet refers to Ur in Haran and reopens the discussion of where the Ur of the Chaldees, Abraham's birthplace, was located. The biblical evidence is by itself conclusive in placing Ur of the Chaldees in the Urfa, Haran region of south-central Turkey near the Syrian border rather than in southern Mesopotamia, where it is located on so many quote-unquote biblical maps. The Sumerian Ur is never called Ur of the Chaldees in any of the numerous references to Ur in cuneiform tablets. The designation of Abraham's Ur as of the Chaldees distinguishes it from the other cities called Ur, including Sumerian Ur located about 1,000 miles south of Haran. And local tradition still insists that Urfa is where Abraham was born. Let's have a quick look at Cyrus H. Gordon. Let's have a look at his biography. Gordon was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and he was raised in an upper-class Jewish family with particular emphasis on devotion to Jewish learning, rational thinking, and openness to secular learning. As a scholar, he followed an education track typical of elite European philological scholars. He began studying Hebrew at 5 and became interested in both Greek and Latin. He took his BA, his MA, and his PhD at University of Pennsylvania and took courses at both nearby Graz and Dropsy colleges. They had specialized Bible programs, classics, and ancient Near East. Gordon studied Old Persian as well as Sanskrit. So he worked with a number of well-known names, and he also took positions at Johns Hopkins University under Albright, at Smith College, and at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton. He joined the army. He was assigned to the Middle East, serving in the Mediterranean, Egypt, Palestine, Iraq, and eventually Iran. There he learned to speak modern Persian. He visited major archaeological sites of ancient Persia and published a book on a number of Aramaic incantation bowls from the collection of the Tehran Museum. Gordon is well known for his books on Ugaritic, the ancient language of the 14th century coastal Syria, that's BC, which was first published in 1940, and he played a key role in deciphering that language. He asserted that Syrian literature reflects frequent contact between ancient Syrians and speakers of Hebrew in the Eastern Med. He was one of the greatest synthesizers of biblical studies with the study of the ancient Near East, and one of the final products was his 1997 book, co-authored with Gary Rensburg, The Bible and the Ancient Near East. So that gives you a little bit of his background. Again, you can find the rest on Wikipedia. And I'll leave this here, but understand it is by no means decided that Ur is Ur in the south. It seems that the evidence, the biblical evidence, most certainly points to Ur being that in the north. I'll leave it at that. Thanks very much, and I'll see you guys next time.